What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. Before we get into today's video, I wanted to let you know that we have about a third of our website on sale in our bargain bin right now. We're trying to make room to clear out for our 2023 merchandise. Some of my favorite designs are discounted right now, so head on over, links down in the description below. Some of the items we have are our Summer of Boost t-shirt and hats. We've got our JDM S15 t-shirt, Saturdays from Mexico t-shirt and hoodie. We've got our Mexico is anywhere you want to be t-shirt and hoodie, and our R34 JDM shirt. We also have a few new merch items as well. We've got two new windbreakers, camo windbreaker designs, a high-vis hoodie, and plenty more. So head on over to 1320video.com, links down in the description below. Let's get to today's video.
I'm Joey Heichel, and this is the story of the Beater Bomb. So my background on racing, not really a whole lot sparked it, you know. Just growing up as a kid, I basically liked anything with engines, you know. I think that's pretty much how most racers start, is they get a go-kart and step it on up from there. Growing up as a kid, I remember, you know, like the lawnmower smell. I love that, you know, and it just got, you know, from there you got a go-kart and rode that for several years. I mean, I'd say probably 4 or 5 years, and it went on to cars from there. You know, you get old enough, 15, we searched around for a Fox body Mustang. I think that was basically everybody's car of choice back then. That was back in 2005. So it was a big era before, you know, as you see Fox bodies now, they were pretty stock because they were built in the 90s, you know. So nobody really had them souped up or anything. And around the area, I grew up in Omaha, so around this area, you know, they were pretty average, I'd say. And my dad and I found a convertible Mustang. Lowish miles, I think it had maybe 80,000 miles on it for the year, and everything worked pretty factory, no mods, pretty stock. It was a stick shift, and that's where the car craze started. And I ended up putting headers on it and starting from zero, headers, underdrive pulleys. You know, those were a big deal back then, you know, a whopping 3 horsepower. But, you know, you're a young kid, you know, you want to do the cool stuff. And then it came to be, I was a couple years older, had a little bit more money, and I came to the fork in the road where you're either gonna go a turbo or a blower. And, you know, looking back, I wish, as I was a young kid, I wish I did a turbo, but I ended up going the blower route. And then you gotta build the motor, and it just went on till I was gonna go to college, and I needed a more reliable car to drive around. And that's where the old Beater Bomb came about. A year before I went to college, I loved Fox bodies. I wanted to find another that I could drive around without guzzling gas and being loud, you know, that would drive to college. I went to college in Milford, so roughly 80 miles from Omaha. So it wasn't terribly far, but pretty far enough that you wanted something to get you there. And I ended up finding this. It was a 4-cylinder, pretty rough, I'd say, obviously from the name. Did a lot of dumb stuff with it in college, took it off-roading, and a couple, you know, most memorable things that I did with it is put a trailer hitch on it. I had a bunch of toys growing up, you know, I had a 4-wheeler, jet ski, and had to get them to the lake and to the off-road park, you know, somehow. So I ended up towing them around with this, and, you know, had a lot of fun years with it. Then I started getting older again, and I'm like, the drop top, as I call it, my first car, kind of like got pushed off to the side. I ended up going to a import face-off event down in Kansas City at KCIR. Might have been 2012 or so. And I saw a Fox body there that went 1050s on motor, and it really intrigued me, like, how can they go that fast? That was pretty fast back in the day, you know, of 2012s. And I went over there to the pits, looked at it, and it had an LS motor in it, and that was it. And I was like, wow, that's simple to go that fast, because the drop top was Ford powered, and I just dumped a lot of money into that, and it just didn't seem tens fast, you know. We only have an 1/8 mile around here, so it was, you know, 7.0s, upper 6s, and that doesn't equate to 1050s, you know. And it's like, wow, I could easily transform the old Beater Bomb into something like that pretty easily, I thought. And then the parts just came. It started, you know, the AJE K member, they sell a K member for it, and my buddy AJ, he helped me out a lot and sourcing parts, you know, and because we had to find an LS motor to put in, and junkyards back then, you know, they had a few, but not as many as nowadays, and they weren't exactly a dime a dozen. But that's where the whole transformation from 4-cylinder to V8 came about. And, you know, from there on, it just got more aggressive. Once I built that, we took it out to the local street races, and no one really knew what was in it, you know. We kept telling them it was some stock 302, and it definitely did pretty good, you know, first couple times out. The really large moment in its life, 1320, we were out at this Sonic car meet, and, you know, pretty regular weekly thing that we'd go to, and the Beater Bomb started getting up there, you know. A lot of people started recognizing it around town, and it was pretty fast for what it was. Obviously, piece of junk Mustang, no roll cage yet, and had some nitrous on it, you know. Didn't really know what I was doing at that point in time. It was pretty stockish motor and basic plate kit. It might have even had a fogger on it back then. And the local bike gang started talking some shit, and, you know, because obviously this thing was known by then around the local scene to being pretty fast, and we ended up going down the road from Sonic and racing a couple times from a roll, a couple times from a start. And it was weird to see a car beat these bikes, and I don't think the bikes realized how fast the car was back then. And shoot, it had to have been 2014 maybe, I don't know, it was a while ago. But that was one of the first videos that Kyle, I think it was actually Garrett that got the video off his cell phone of me racing these bikes. And it's a pretty famous video of the Beater Bomb racing bikes, and I feel like that was one of the first larger videos that Kyle ended up doing of the Beater Bomb. And there's been several videos since then. We went all the way to Texas and went street racing. A couple from Kansas City, you know, and those videos are when it had a rod and piston motor. It wasn't a stock motor. The stock motor, you know, lasted quite a while, but with anybody, you get bored. You want to go faster and faster, add nitrous, and that's when we went to Texas. You know, I felt like we had a really good running car, but you learn there's other fast cars out there too, especially Texas. And the old Fox body is not the best roll racer, you know, but we definitely had a lot of fun. I went down there a couple years. There was one time melted down the motor, fuel pump quit, and then I just had to decide, you know, I want to do the turbo thing, and a couple friends had turbo cars, and that was where I met my buddy Brad, Vasco Speed and Performance. He was a guy that we met in Kansas City going to all those car meets and stuff, and I got a hold of him and said, hey Brad, do you want to build me a turbo kit? He's like, oh yeah, sure. I mean, he knew that the car was pretty popular in its nitrous state, and we thought we could do well with each other and move forward. So I was like, all right, well, I'll just bring it down, blown up motor and all, might as well get the turbo kit built first before I fixed the motor, and that was where the turbo craze started. And I don't remember the year, it had to have been 2015 or so, and that was a single turbo S480, pretty basic stuff. We did really well with it, went to Streetcar Takeover a few times. This was back when Streetcar Takeover first started. They had an event at Gateway, which is in St. Louis. Made it a few rounds, did really well, but again, you know, you find faster cars when you travel around, and I couldn't settle for being slow, and so it evolved to a bigger built motor, and I never did do twin turbos. I just did the single turbo stuff with the LS, and you know, it pretty much evolved to a few years later, and as kind of just wanted to get faster and faster. 2019 was a pretty pivotal turning point in the old Beater Bombs racing program. My good buddy Joe Hunt had just passed away at the end of the 2019 season. We were at a drag race and just ended up getting a little bit too far out of the groove and ended up hitting an object off the side of the road. We were at a legal street race where the city wanted to raise money to help their city and bring outsiders into their city and put some money into it, and they held a pretty fun street race that we went to several years in a row. This was just a freak thing that I'd say happened, you know. No really safety items I feel like would have saved him, but it just happens. And so I wanted to reevaluate my racing program and make it better or quit. I didn't really know, you know, and I got with Brad at Vasco Speed and Performance, and we ended up doing what's called a 25-2 chassis. It's an NHRA deal, and that's about as safe as you can get, you know, according to NHRA, and cut the whole center of the car out. Fox bodies don't really have frame rails in the middle, so you cut it out between the front and the rear frame rails, and there's basically nothing there when we started. And we ended up spending over 3 months. Every weekend I drove to Kansas City to help Brad. I would bend the bars, he would weld them, and every weekend back and forth, back and forth. Oh man, that was a lot. But in the end, I feel like it was well worth it. It did take us a whole year to get the whole car sorted out. When you put in that much cage and stuff, it really affects the way the car handles, and the chassis is much more stiff. We ended up changing engine combinations and stuff, and it was difficult, but I just kept at it. Definitely didn't have as successful as years at that season in 2020 as I used to. Not really sure if it was from Joe passing or not, but things were just difficult, and towards the end of the year I just really sat back and looked like, hey, where can I improve? You know, what am I doing wrong here? We ended up, you know, changing a lot of stuff back and forth, and I feel like that's what hurt me, is just kept changing stuff. And if you just keep it at one thing and, you know, work on that, you'll be successful. And that's how I ended up finishing the year. That year I won a $15,000 race at the end of September, and you know, it really made me look back and say, hey, you know, this long road of sucking ain't that bad. You know, you just keep trying at it and you'll get to the end. And finished off that season and had a, I would call, extremely successful 2021 season. We only lost 3 races out of 33 races. So it was, like I said, extremely successful, and the hard work, I feel like, sets that apart. And you know, not a lot of people see what happens outside the racetrack. I firmly believe when you get to the racetrack, you just have to floor it, and that's it. All the homework is done during the week of the race or weeks before the race. You know, know where you're gonna go, know what the surface is gonna be like, how do I need to set the car up, what previous data can I look at to set the car up, you know. 2021 season was also the debut of the Butthurt bar, because, you know, 2020 was a little rough, and after removing the floors and stuff like that in the middle of the car, it actually took a lot of weight off the rear. So the car didn't hook as good, and the old Butthurt bar was pretty aggressive, I would call it. And I knew when Brad and I built that thing that it would get a lot of rejections, you know, and it definitely did. Our first event out in 2021, I brought it out of the trailer and I was banned from that night's cash days before I even made a pass. You know, it was disappointing for sure, because people looked at it as dangerous. But as rounds went on during that first event, they saw, you know, the control I had of the car, and it wasn't as dangerous as they first thought. So I ended up winning that first event with it, and that night I went to the street race, and the other local guys there were definitely on my side. They wanted to see me race, you know, they know how hard I work, and they don't want to see people get disqualified over nothing. In the street racing scene, we pretty much race tire size, and that's it. It is legit just the tire. You could bring anything else you want, and I did. And that was a big deal of the 2021 season. It got a lot of drama started on the internet. I mean, just anybody and everybody was complaining about it, and I feel like if Nancy from down the street had one that just went to races occasionally, they would have never banned it or denied it, whatever you want to call it. But had I not won races, or, you know, had I not won all those races, it would have just been pushed under the rug. But like the back of my old trailer used to say, I'm financed by my haters, and they just love to bet against it, you know, just because they want to see me lose. Another hard part of losing when you have such a well-known car is the backlash that you get on the internet afterwards. Everybody wants to make this meme about you, this and that, and you just gotta look past it. I mean, people are just gonna do that to get under your skin and make you upset. But one thing that definitely sets me apart, I feel like, is I'm not one to get mad at people. People get mad at me because I'm not the one upset. It's them that are upset, and you just gotta look past them Facebook comments and move forward, you know, just work on your racing program. There's this really special meme to me out there. It says, winners focus on winning and haters focus on winners. So just stick to that and you'll be successful.